This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is the second in a two-part MacVoices live conversation with Andrew Orr of the Mac Observer and David Ginsburg of In Touch with iOS. In the first part, we dug deep into some security matters, focusing on a discussion of one or two particular security apps, but really more about why it's important to know not just the capabilities of those apps, but also about the company behind them. This time around, we shift gears and talk about hardware longevity, software longevity, what developers might be able to do to continue to get paid and help us extend the life of hardware, and a whole lot more. So we'll get right back to the conversation with Andrew and David. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, I made this an article of the day yesterday in MacVoices magazine, or excuse me, in the Facebook group. I also put it in MacVoices magazine, that Fujitsu has updated their drivers to support the older version of the ScanSnap scanners, one of which is over this shoulder, right over there. That was obsolete until this came out. Now, I'm the first one to tell you I haven't had a chance to install it and test it yet, but there were a number of people that responded on Facebook that said they tried it and it worked, and it works great, even with scanners older than what I have. And this is a complete reversal by Fujitsu on what they were going to do. They were basically saying, nope, all that legacy hardware is done, and we're moving on, and you'll have to, if you want to continue to scan, you're going to have to buy a whole new ScanSnap. And these are not inexpensive pieces of hardware. I mean, we're talking $300-$400, give or take. So I was personally delighted to see that they did an update that works at least up through Catalina, and if it works in Catalina, I would hope it would work in Big Sur. And I'm curious to see if either one of you had any reactions to this or thoughts about this as to why they would reverse their decision after. Basically, I'm sure some people went out and buying new scanners, and now they've released software that make the old scanners still good.
You have to wonder if they got a lot of pressure on the product itself, because being able to keep a product that long, because most technology companies don't want to hold on to their older products, 10, 15 years old, because some of those scanners are really old and sort of older technology. So it was kind of surprising. I didn't even know if they did the update for Windows too. I didn't see that in the article, but I am very surprised. I mean, I think a lot of these hardware companies are just wanting to abandon it and walk away and say, it was good while it lasted, and go buy a new one. That's really what happened.
Yeah. Andrew, any thoughts?
I'm not too familiar with this, but I did read the article you sent me, and it is great to hear, because as we three know, Apple is deprecating the 32-bit apps, moving to 64-bit, and it can be kind of confusing for some people when they see this notification that says your app is 32-bit and it may not be supported in a future OS update. And so you kind of have to wonder, well, what's going to happen? Is the developer going to do something for me, or maybe I need to contact Apple afterwards? And so it is great to hear that there is going to be an update to this to support 64-bit.
Yeah, David brought up. That's another one of those throwaway comments that I think it would benefit us to examine. When we're talking about something that costs $300 or $400, I don't know about you all, but I don't enter into that lightly. I mean, $100 app or a piece of gear, I can't just throw away $100 here and there. But at the same time, all right, if that is deprecated, that's fine. You start getting into $200, $300, $400, $300, $400, $500 items, I expect them to last for a while. Now, the question is, how long is a while? How long should a while be before a manufacturer can say, you know what, we're just not going to support that version anymore? And so I would submit to you guys, you know what, because it feels like the length of serviceable time for most computers, including over on the Windows side, but we talk, Apple on this side, it's expanding. It's stretching out. You may not be able to do everything quite as fast, and you may not be able to have all the new features of the software, but you can still get a whole lot done with these machines 8, 9, 10 years later. And so how long is long enough for, let's say, a scanner maker or a printer maker or whatever to say they're going to keep their drivers up to date and keep that keep that hardware running?
Yeah, it seems to me that a lot of these manufacturers do it at around 5 years. I think that's around the sweet spot where you start seeing things dropping off with printers and with scanners. I mean, you're right. I mean, there are so many high end scanners like the one you have. I don't have that one, but I mean, I used to support a scanner. I know that was $1,500 and $2,000 because it was for a claims department, and they were constantly scanning a lot of documents, and especially when you're wanting to be able to do high volume scanning. Those scanners are expensive, and you don't want that. You don't want to become obsolete, and it was starting to become obsolete as the scanner aged. The one I was working with. So yeah, I mean, I think there really is no answer to that. I think it's just you have to understand where are these manufacturers going to do, where they're going to draw the line. Do they want to continue to support this? I mean, it requires their research and development and having to have developers involved to creating new drivers and making sure that they're working with the newer, latest and greatest operating systems. So that's where I guess they have to put their value in this as far as that goes, and they have to adjust accordingly with that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
I agree. The 5 years was the number in my head, as well as two. Hopefully that would be maybe at least the minimum amount of long-term support. I don't think I've ever bought an app that was that expensive. But for example, my MacBook Pro that I'm using right now is from 2014. And it does run into some speed issues here and there, but otherwise it still works great. And so I would hope to see a large amount of money going to a purchase like that, being able to spread that cost out over a number of years.
I agree. And 5 years is not a bad length of time. From I guess when they say what are they going to do? Suspend it or stop supporting it and say, okay, as 5 years from tomorrow, we're going to end support, because somebody in the pipeline is going to inevitably buy it. 2 weeks before they completely drop support, and then they're going to be furious. So trying to announce some of this stuff in advance is good. I guess, for certain things, like David, like you were saying, the $2,000 or $3,000 scanner in a more production-oriented environment. I mean, you can keep it running by connecting it to an old machine and turning that into a dedicated station. But, then you have security issues of if you're connecting that computer to the internet, and what else is it maybe not doing, or how is it not supporting your workflows? So it feels like a complex question that we don't ask often enough, because we just sort of accept that, okay, it's time for this to die. And gee, it doesn't feel that old to me, and it's still doing its job if they would just keep it up. And so I tip my hat to Fujitsu, and I'm really happy to see that they're supporting some of these scanners that are perfectly good, at least up through Catalina. And so they've automatically extended their life into the 64-bit world.
That's the thing with a scanner. The scanners aren't like printers. I mean, they do have mechanical moving parts in them, but there's something that you're going to be using a pretty long time, especially if you have a lot of paper. I mean, that's what it's for. You want to be able to scan paper documents with the feeders. But you want to scan photos, there's all kinds of things, obviously, we do with scanners. And with this day and age, with these all-in-one printers, I have one, the Epson, and that has the all-in-one scanner, printer, fax, whatever. You've got a lot of those machines out there too. So that's the thing. I mean, there aren't a lot of people. I mean, back in the day, yeah, everyone as a consumer would buy a standalone scanner because that's all they wanted to do. Or there were a lot of times where printers didn't come with scanners, and it was always like a luxury to buy a printer that had that. So in the case of the scanner, yeah, you don't see as many standalone scanners as you used to. But no, it's great. I think that Fujitsu was I commend them for doing such a thing by releasing that.
Yeah. Well, and with the ScanSnap, I mean that is a document scanner. It's not a photo scanner. Let's be clear. And so most of us, and I'll speak for a whole lot of people that I have no right to speak for, but we purchased it so we could go a lot more paperless, so we could scan the paper easily into our systems and then ditch the paper. And I honestly, I've got to go back and look and see when I bought it. I'm probably, to be fair, I'm probably way outside the 5-year range. So I've gotten more than a justifiable lifetime out of it. And
I mean, I think a scanner could go 10 years. A scanner could go 15 years. I mean, I remember seeing HP scanners that were, oh my gosh, does this thing still work? You know, you pick it up and look at it, it's like, oh my God, the technology is so old. And then you find out, oh yeah, no more support for drivers, you know, because it's just too old. It just won't work anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's difficult because obviously there's not a lot of money, if any money, in scanner drivers. So you expect support up to a certain point, and then you start to say, okay, is it reasonable for a hardware company to start charging for the driver to make their hardware work beyond a certain time period?
Not wrong with that option. I haven't seen that too often that a manufacturer would do that. I think there might be some reasoning why they wouldn't do that, but I don't know what.
Yeah. Andrew, is that something you're familiar with or have heard about?
You know, I've actually never used a physical before. I wouldn't say I have a whole lot of stuff I wanted to digitize, but when I did, I just used the iPhone's built-in tools. So you can use the camera to scan directly into Apple Notes or the Files app, for example.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's another thing that has changed a whole lot.
That's what's really affected the scanner business is the iPhone. So any mobile phone, could be Android or iPhone, and that scan those devices very easily.
Yeah, I would like to see that as a model especially for the more expensive hardware. And again, folks, you define expensive the way you want. 300, 500, 700, whatever. But I mean, let's put it this way. Up to this point, I would not have minded paying Fujitsu for a driver to make that scanner continue into the 64-bit world. That would have been perfectly fine with me. And as long as it, really did restore the functionality. Now they've released it for free, which is great. Nobody's going to argue with free, but I feel like we're coming full circle back to that VPN discussion. If I'm not paying for it, where's the incentive for them to keep it up?
Mm-hmm.
But if they're keeping it up, I think they should be paid for it. And so, I think that's a very viable option. And I'd love to hear somebody tell me why it's not, other than the fact that you'd rather not pay for it.
Yeah, interesting to find out. Again, manufacturers, it varies what they want to do. It might be something they just aren't in a position to do.
Yeah. Frank in the chat room says, I use Preview on my iPhone for receipt and document scanning. Yeah, I mean, that has turned into a very viable option. I'm not quite sure that it's as convenient as dropping it into a ScanSnap. You certainly are getting resolution, but then you have the management of some of that stuff on the back end. And I won't speak for you, gentlemen, but I have my ScanSnap connected to oh great, I've just completely lost the app right now. DevonThink. So DevonThink, I hit that button, it sucks it into DevonThink, and DevonThink catalogs it, OCRs it, and then I can find anything I want, easily. So it's
where I use Scanner Pro from Riedel, they do the same thing. It's putting it all in one place, and you can store it in the Files app, and keep maintenance with it too. I think that's one of my favorite scanning apps on the iPhone.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
I'm gonna close these blinds real quick.
I was wondering with all that light coming in.
Let's see.
Andrew looks like he's podcasting from prison.
I normally have my desk in my living room, but for podcasting, I like to go in my bedroom because it's smaller, so it just has better acoustics.
Mm-hmm. Understood. So the other big news of the day, and literally as we record this of today, is that CES is going to go virtual, completely digital in 2021, which is really kind of a bummer for some of us who actually enjoy CES and enjoy seeing our friends, but also enjoy walking the floor, no matter how many miles it is, and seeing the stuff up close and having those chance random encounters with cool hardware, software, or people that you just don't get by reading press releases, no matter how hard you try. It just doesn't happen. I respect the fact that CES needed to do it this early because it's such a massive undertaking for that show that they had to do it early and make some decisions. But I'm still disappointed. And I'm curious to see how you guys feel. Andrew, what I know, have you been to CES?
Actually, I haven't. But I feel like it is a move that they definitely had to make. Just, it's a for the public good medical sort of thing, so they kind of have to. So it is unfortunate because, like you said, if you go in person, there are all these chance meetings with people and all that sort of physical connections that you can't really replace with Zoom, for example. So it will be interesting to see what they do after 2021. If like with Apple's WWDC this year, if this will be the norm, or if maybe they will have a live conference and online, or if it will be some other mixture. So that will be interesting to see.
Yeah. David, how about you?
Yeah, I was. In fact, I broke the news to you guys this morning during our conversations. So it was good to see some dialogue about that with our friends. Yeah, I mean, obviously, from me coming off my very first CES earlier this year, so it is kind of sad that it is going to happen. But I'm glad they did it. I think it was smart on the that they did do this because of just all the health issues. And I was questionable if they were going to do it, if I would even be able to go, just because I just don't feel comfortable with it. And I think a lot of people probably were in that position. Puts a lot of hardship on Vegas for sure, because that's their biggest conference of the year, and so you're going to see some financial hits to them. But it looks like they're being positive. I've seen tweets them saying we'll come back in 2022 and they'll be even stronger. But yeah, it's going to be interesting what they do. I mean, how they're going to actually do this. I mean, yeah, I mean, we also talked about some of the other conferences that that it's part of CES that we would attend. And some presentations were good, and others were not so good because people's presentation skills doing it over virtual are a little rough under the edges. And you've obviously done shows talking about how to do a Zoom conference, and so that's where I hope that they're going to have to focus on getting these folks up to speed, making sure they're sharp on their presentation skills, because when they're on the show floor, they're just at their booths. They know their products, and I was there. I watched you, and I watched others that interviewed these folks. That I don't know how it's going to be virtually. I mean, it's just going to be something different. How they're going to handle this. But services like Microsoft Teams are going to be offering ways of 100,000 people can be able to be connected to a conference. So I think that's a lot of that expansion's happening with these services, and I think it's going to get accelerated even more because of this announcement for sure is going to affect it. So all these services, Zoom and Teams and all the others, are going to go to the CES team and say, hey, we can do this for you. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, I'm sad though. I did really enjoy it, and you're right. It's going to be a lot different than walking up to a booth and being able to find out about a product.
Mm-hmm.
I have an idea. This is a topic we're going to explore, in a little more depth after we've all had a chance to sort of absorb the news and, figure out what our reactions are. I know one of my first gut level reactions, other than the ones I just described, were that there are parts of CES that absolutely can be easily done online, arguably maybe even be done better online. But there are other parts that I'm just not sure how you're going to get the attention that an in-person demo. I mean, go back and look at any CES coverage from pretty much any website that's serious about covering it. And sooner or later, you're going to find an article that, like, here are the hidden gems, or here were the things that we didn't expect to see, or didn't expect them to be as good as they were. And the fact that you could walk up and talk to the people and see them live and in person. And so I feel for a lot of those developers who that's their chance to get the word out. And I'm going to be very interested to see how the Consumer Technology Association helps facilitate those connections and those and that communication. And things like PepCom and Showstoppers, which were specifically for press. I mean, those were still huge events that you had a hard time getting around to see everyone. And how are they going to respond? I mean, that hurts, obviously, their business model in a big way. So how are they going to respond to that? Are they going to try to do something to connect, the developers with the press so that they get the exposure they want and need? And frankly, that we all get what we want and need too, because we want and need things to talk about or see.
Yeah.
So I know, Andrew, I know that the TMO has not had a chance to think about some of these things, but it's going to be a challenge across the board.
I mean, depending on how forward-thinking you are, maybe in 5 years we'll all be having these conferences in virtual reality, for example. We just don't really know at this point.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Linode. You can build it on Linode. By visiting linode.com/MacVoices, you can take $20 off your first server package. So what are you buying? You are buying a service that delivers dedicated CPUs, distributed applications, hosted websites, and CI/CD environments. You are buying native SSD storage, a 40 gigabit network, and industry-leading processors, so your website or hosted service will be as fast as possible and as responsive as possible. You are buying a spot in one of Linode's 10 worldwide data centers, including the newest in Mumbai. You are buying their new Cloud Manager feature with an improved user interface. You are buying one-click installs of things like WordPress, Minecraft, VPNs, and much more. That's what you're buying when you visit linode.com/MacVoices, and you get $20 off your first server package to boot. Get your next project off the ground and into the cloud at linode.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Linode for their support of MacVoices. Right. And WWDC, so let's talk about a couple that we know about. WWDC seemed to come across really, really well. In fact, I'm not sure some developers didn't prefer it virtual because they got a little more, maybe not hands-on time literally, but a little more time with some of the Apple folks to solve their problems. And so everything I heard about that was that, from the developer standpoint, it was very successful. Mike Potter just this past weekend ran an amazingly successful and well-organized Macstock on a virtual basis. Something that, I think a lot of us were not dreading Macstock, but we were dreading not having the camaraderie that we've had in the past. And it still came off, and the camaraderie was there just virtually. I know I've been to some business conferences, some which lasted multiple days and were terrific. And then there were some that lasted half a day and were terrible. Yeah. And so, there are a lot of lessons out there to be learned. Mm-hmm. So I wish I had all the answers. I'm trying to compile a list of things that, okay, this is what works, and this is why it works, and this is what doesn't work, and avoid that.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, like I said before, getting these services and understanding how they work and brushing up on your presentation skills and doing it in a virtual way. And people are so used to standing up in front of an audience, doing a presentation, and it's a lot different when you do it virtually. I mean, I've done it many, many times, and it's a challenge. That's for sure.
So, Andrew, what else is on your radar right now? It seems like the Apple world is just a little bit slow after WWDC, as it always is.
I was actually going to mention Netflix. There's a lot of good content on Netflix lately in the entertainment side, but not just Netflix. Dave Hamilton was just talking to us in our meeting about this show on Apple TV Plus called Home. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, but just from what you described, it sounded pretty interesting. It sounds like it's going into people's houses and seeing how they're integrating technology, I think.
Wow, what
So
haven't heard about this one. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, they could probably do
on
a special
Netflix-
on. They could do a special on any of the three of us.
Oh yeah. But on Netflix, so there's this cool show that I've seen that I've recommended to everyone. It's called Love, Death, and Robots.
Well, don't just leave us there. Tell us more.
So I personally love it because I'm into sci-fi. So it's a series. It's an anthology. There are about maybe 10 episodes, and each episode is its own short story. And they're all short. Like no episode is longer than 20 minutes. And each episode is also done in a different animation style. And so, like, I've just been raving about this show lately. I love it. So the Love, Death, and Robots are the themes. Every episode has at least one of those themes. Some of them have more than one. And so it released last year, and I don't know when it's coming out yet, but I just saw that they announced a second season that will be coming sometime in the future. So I'm very excited. So if you're looking for something to watch, I recommend maybe checking that out.
Yeah, I'm looking at this Home, and they've got 4 episodes so far. The 3 foreign cities, Sweden, Bali, and Hong Kong, and my hometown, Chicago. So they just really spreading it out of different homes, and yeah, this looks interesting. I think that's a good recommendation. I want to watch this now.
Yeah, Dave was telling us about how the first episode, I think it was in Sweden, and it sounded like this person made their house or like integrated it with a greenhouse, which sounded pretty fascinating.
Yeah, this looks fascinating. This looks fascinating.
So if the crew is in Chicago, David, your doorbell should be ringing any minute.
Yeah. I'm gonna watch that episode right away to see what it was all about.
Yeah, and then they'll go over to Andrew's place because Andrew, you're not that far. I mean, you're still in the general vicinity, are you not?
Yeah. So I'm in Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. I'm probably about 4 to 5 hours away from Chicago. So I wouldn't say it's a huge trip, you know.
Sure about that? I've driven up to Traverse City and up to the UP and went to Mackinac Island, and that was a long drive.
Oh yeah.
But if you're producing a TV show, it's not that big a deal.
Beautiful up here.
Mackinac is beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
Oh yeah.
UP's beautiful up there. Just a little cold during the wintertime.
Yeah, we are right on the edge with Canada.
You're cold winter times.
It's been interesting to watch how the major networks and all the entertainment services have reacted to things. I mean, some went home, some are using the technologies that we've been using to do this for a long time, and of course they're doing it with gear that's a whole lot more expensive, or in some cases not. I mean, early on, a lot of them were doing it with iPhones and Zoom and all, and so I feel like some places they're just filling in and they're doing bad reality TV, and then other places people are getting really, really creative. And frankly, I think sometimes the online folks are much more creative than the studios, because the studios are just still looking for that something that will appeal to the masses, and the folks that are producing content for the smaller audience, if you will, I think are doing a lot better quality wise with what they're creating.
Even Jimmy Fallon was doing a lot of his at home episodes he was using just an iPhone. It was amazing quality, and for him coming from a production, used to having production people and all the studio hands and his writers, and it was interesting to see what they did with technology. Well, Jimmy's an exception because he's a big Apple. He likes Apple, a lot of Apple products. He always has a Mac on his desk, and but so many others. Yeah, it was a little interesting to see how they handled things. It wasn't as professional, I should say. Could be a good word.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, like you said, Chuck, you can kind of tell by watching an episode or two, the ones where they're doing it as sort of a, here's what we're doing in the meantime. And then you can definitely tell when others are embracing it and they're really making online their focus, at least for the moment.
Well, and look, I understand what I'm about to say represents 3 or 4 minutes of content, but there's some amazing lockdown videos by lots of musicians, including the Macworld All-Star Band that we had those guys here a few weeks ago. That they're doing things in their homes, but Sammy Hagar and the Circle have done it. In fact, I've seen so many now, I'm starting to lose track. A lot of them are one-offs, but then there are the folks, the musicians and all that early on in COVID were, doing things they were hooking up a camera and hitting the stream button on Facebook Live or YouTube Live and sending something out. It may not have been great production and they were just using what they had, but it was still something. And some of those have now kicked it up a little bit. They've gotten their act together, get a little bit better equipment, figured out the streaming thing a little bit more. And I feel like that's where some of the high quality entertainment is coming from. It's just a matter of finding it.
Yeah, I mean, notably, the artists that stood out to me is Grace Potter and Daughtry. They both were doing stuff, and Grace Potter was in Vermont, and I know she was having some major internet challenges out there because she was in the country, but she did it, and then you watched it. And it was just beautiful. It was just a great performance, and singing the songs and telling stories, and they don't get the opportunity when they're at a concert. I mean, they have a play set and a music set, and it was more personable. That's what I found, and I think these artists are starting to see more and more of that and taking advantage of it.
And we also have to find a way to help support them.
Yes,
because the free streams are great and these free projects are great, but right now they're not out there playing concerts, and they're not out there selling their merchandise, and they're whatever you happen to think about, how they get paid from streaming services or album sales, they're not making any money, and that means that there has to be some way we figure out how to support them, whether it's through GoFundMe pages or or buying some of the merchandise, or having some kind of limited way to contribute to them for a special track or whatever. But that's the musicians and the production people. I've got a couple of good friends that are in the production side of it. They're not out on the stage. They're the ones behind the scenes that make everything happen. And there's just nothing out there for them now because the events aren't happening.
And then they have the concept of revitalizing drive-in theaters and having these bands were going setting things up, like Garth Brooks, until he had to cancel it. I think he was charging like $150 or a car or something like that, $100, and that's a lot of money. But if you get 4 or 5 people in the car, it's kind of nice. But then you go to these drive-in theaters, of course, the sound quality is not going to be that great. So, but they're trying to come up with utilizing technologies and doing this stuff. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting in the music industry.
Yeah, folks, I'd love to hear what some of your favorite lockdown things are and what your thoughts are on this, because there, as David said, there are people everywhere trying different things. I know the drive-in theater thing in my area is blossoming. That used to be a thing of the past, and now all of a sudden it's back. So if you have other things that are happening in your area, I'd love to hear about them, share them. Maybe we can, transplant some of those ideas to where we can use them.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else, Andrew, for the good of the order?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything.
Okay. Good. Well, it's great to have you here. Thanks for coming. And but we won't make this the last time. We will do it again.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. And I'd love to be on again in the future.
Count on it. Count on it. Where can folks find you when you're not here on Mac Voices Live? What are some of the places?
I usually just tell people to maybe check me out on Twitter. And so my username is Andrew or not. So check me out. I like to share not just my own articles or other people's articles at the Mac Observer, but also I like to share, my thoughts and opinions on what other people are writing about.
Okay. And of course, we can find you not every day, but a lot of days on Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast with Kelly Gamont and a cast of crazies.
Yep.
So, well, again, thanks for being here. It was great to have you. David, how about you? Where can we find you?
You can find me at In Touch with iOS at intouchwithios.com. That's my podcast. Having a lot of fun doing that. And I'm on Twitter at DaveG65, and I'm always posting some interesting things as well, get some insights. But yeah, those are two places you can find me.
Great. Thank you, sir. Good to see you. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. Thanks for stopping by Mac Voices Live. We are doing this every Tuesday night, and most nights the Zoom room is open. All you have to do is click the link, and you can be in here with us if you want. So please join us next Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.